Hey, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? Excellent. All right. So, welcome. I'm Mike Lucas, Chairperson of the Board of Education. On behalf of my colleagues here, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thanks to Dr. Navarro and her staff for being here. I'd like to thank everyone who came out and those who joined us here in person or if you're watching on the live stream. My colleagues and I appreciate everyone gathering here for the town hall. And so the purpose of town hall is to have a little different environment than our regular board meetings, where it can be just a little more interactive. And so hope we have that dialogue tonight. If there's anyone here that wants to speak, please make sure that you checked in back there. And I don't think we'll have too much problem with traffic flow, but if you have a question at any time, just let somebody know, and so there's not a bunch of people lining up with the microphone. And we'll rotate through people speaking. I do ask that all speakers and the commenters try to limit your remark to 2 minutes to give everybody a chance to speak, and also allow for everyone here to answer your questions. And again, if you have any questions, you can put them on an index card, or just let somebody know, and you can come up to the mic and ask your question. I do want to read, this is our standard thing that we read at our public comment. So our rules for public forum apply to tonight's town hall as well. All speakers should identify themselves, and any comments should relate to Charles County Public Schools or other education-related items. Exceptions to these rules are the following. Please be mindful of these exceptions when sharing your comments. Personnel matters, pending or potential appeals, or comments regarding the action or statements of individual staff or the private lives of any individual are not appropriate topics. On behalf of the board, I also ask that all attendees, including speakers here and virtually, use proper language and decorum at all times. And again, the intent for tonight's town hall is for board members and staff to listen and talk with community members. Open dialogue and feedback is the ultimate goal. And we'll make sure that any questions that are asked, we're going to post afterwards so that if everyone can see them, just the folks that aren't here. And we're going to start off tonight with a presentation, correct? On our CTE programs. And again, on behalf of the board, I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight.
Good evening, great to see everyone. My name is Kevin Lowndes and I'm Chief of Teaching and Learning. And tonight we're going to hear a presentation from Rebecca Brandt about the career and technical education in Charles County Public Schools. You know, we've been talking about CTE for quite a bit this year with a committee that we brought together to look at our current programs, where they're located, and then the needs of Charles County going forward, and making some decisions going forward. So please pay attention to Rebecca tonight and get a good understanding of what's going on in Charles County with our career technical education programs, and we would love to hear some of the questions and the thoughts that you have this evening. Rebecca?
Thank you. So good evening. As Mr. Lowndes said, I'm Rebecca Brandt, Director of Career and Technical Education, CTE, in Charles County, and I want to take a moment just to introduce my team and our department that does all this wonderful work. So we've got Kevin Reisinger, CTE Specialist, Sandy Rooney, CTE Specialist and Apprenticeship Maryland Coordinator. We've got Simone Young, STEM Coordinator, and Christina Jones, Career Specialist, which is a new position that was just brought on this year. All right, so let's go ahead and start with building a concrete definition. When we're talking about career and technical education, what is it? What is it meant to be? Why is it so important? And it is a series of courses that students can elect to take in high school. These courses are in a specific career field, an area of interest that they think that they want to learn in a lot more detail. The wonderful thing about this is it does focus on a certain career aspect. It offers expertise, certifications, and college credits while they're in high school. So these opportunities also exist in these programs for students to have apprenticeships, internships, and work-based learning experiences. It's ways for our students to graduate high school already having certifications and the experience in the career field. So they're walking out of our building a step ahead, whether it's a step ahead in a college program because they got college credits, or it's because they already have that certification so they can enter into the workforce already with a higher level of expertise. In Charles County, we have a lot of options in CTE as well. So in all of our high schools, we have opportunities for 10 pathways. 8 of those pathways you do not need to apply to. You can choose to be in those pathways through the course selection process. They're open to all students. And they are in a variety of career fields. So every single high school in Charles County has CTE opportunities for our students. Then every high school does have the opportunity for students to apply to both Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute and then also Apprenticeship Maryland. Then there are programs that students do need to apply to, and there's 2 different entry points. The first point, students can apply in 8th grade, and there are 17 different programs that 8th graders have that opportunity to apply to. 16 of them are here at North Point High School, and then we have CASE Natural Resources, which is at McDonough. So again, in 8th grade, they would apply for those programs. And then there's another entry point. So a little later on, if students have decided that they have an area of interest, they can apply in 10th grade. And so those programs are at Robert D. Steedham Educational Center. There are 6 unique programs in different career fields, career clusters. If they get into those programs, they attend their high school for a part of the day, and then they are at Steedham for part of the day. So juniors are at Steedham in the morning for their first course, and then seniors are at Steedham in the afternoon for their courses. They go back to their high schools for all their extracurriculars and sports and things like that. For any of our regionalized programs, and that's what we call our programs that are open to anyone in the county through the application process, though they are provided transportation. So as you can see, there's just different entry points. So students have a lot of access throughout as they are starting to navigate their own personal interests. So this is just a glimpse at all the different pathways that we have in Charles County. So as you can see, we have pathways in all career clusters. So MSDE, Maryland State Department of Education, has identified 10 career clusters. There are a few pathways that don't fall neatly in a career cluster, considering Apprenticeship Maryland could be any career. So it's out there on its own. But you can see Charles County does do a great job of representing and supporting each of the career clusters. Here we go. And this is another way that you can see the different entry points, offering versatility for our students as they make decisions. There's a lot of things that go into the considerations that students are making. Whether it's they're okay with leaving their home school, their zone school, exactly what they're really interested in doing when they start to decide what their areas of interest are. So we like to have this versatility. All right, so what makes us decide what pathways we have in Charles County? It's really dependent on our community in a few different ways. First off, it is determined by what is our workforce. We want to create pathways in our schools that lead directly toward opportunities for our students. We don't want to overwhelm the workforce in one specific area and there be no jobs to support skills that we're providing our students. So really what our local workforce needs are is really determinant of what our pathways are. So for instance, the third leading area of employment in Charles County is healthcare. So that we have 5 different CTE pathways in the area of healthcare based on those needs. Okay, so that's just kind of one of the aspects that we look at. And again, another area, student and community interest. It does play a part. What are our students interested in? What are they intrigued to learn more about? So we really do take that information into account. We're looking at our programs, and again, this is a lot of the work that the steering committee is doing. We're looking at the programs that are oversubscribed, and that means more people are applying to them than we have seats. And we're trying to see what additional opportunities in those careers and those areas can we offer within the county. So for instance, culinary arts here at North Point is a program that is usually oversubscribed. More students apply to it than their spots. So what have we done? We offer ProStart food and beverage management at each of our high schools. It's not only because of student interest, but that's also an industry that is supported within our local workforce. So then additionally, we can't just pull a pathway out of the sky. There are specific CTE pathways that are approved through the Maryland State Department of Education, and that really does give the parameters and the aspects that need to be included in the CTE pathway to make it successful. So that's all outlined by the Maryland State Department of Education, and we're going to see that through Blueprint and the CTE committee and the AIB start to transform a little bit. They're putting some more work into some of the parameters around our program, specific standards. They're really taking a deep dive into the standards that are driving our programs, and then also what industry recognized credentials are acceptable for each of our pathways. So those are 2 areas they're really diving into. And again, there's space requirements and equipment needs for specific pathways. So to put an automotive pathway at every high school would be crazy hard because of the need for the equipment and the space provided there. It's not just a regular classroom that you have for that pathway. So we just want to make sure that our CTE pathways are up to those industry standards and are providing our students with those experiences that are true to the industry and the workforce needs. All right, so what makes CTE so special? And you know, I think I've talked a lot about this already. It is definitely a unique type of education. It's hands-on learning, it's experience-driven, it's all about making connections for our students. It answers that, why am I learning this? For our kids. What is this going to have to do with me? Well, they can make a direct line as far as how they're going to utilize the skills that they're learning in their CTE pathways. Each of our pathways has a program advisory committee that drives the instruction, drives the curriculum. It provides guest speaking. It makes sure that the equipment that is in the pathway used within industry and all of those aspects. So it makes it authentic learning. The best thing also is these students have the opportunity to earn industry-recognized credentials while in high school for free. It's an equitable experience for our students to be able to walk out our doors with these credentials in hand, saying, I have mastered this skill and I'm ready to put it to work. And then again, opportunities for internships and apprenticeships. When it comes back on, I'm yelling, but it's okay. And that's something we are continuing to grow. So the opportunity for these apprenticeships is something that is a huge focus in Charles County to offer more and more. All right, so it all ties into the blueprint for Maryland's future. CTE has existed before Blueprint, but it's definitely had an emphasis put on it within Blueprint. And it really does have some positive impacts, and we'll see how it continues to unfold. But under Blueprint, it talks about how students need to be college and career ready by 10th grade. And that emphasis is with the means to make more room for students to explore and provide them additional opportunities later on in high school. So it can enhance the opportunity for Career and Technical Education, along with other post-secondary or post-CCR pathways. Also, we have this goal of 45%. We want 45% of our students graduating with an industry-recognized credential or an apprenticeship, a registered youth apprentice or registered by 2031. So we need those values added. We need our students in high school to be having these extensive experiences and explorations they can use as they move forward. And again, under Blueprint, it talks about a robust college and career exploration program starting earlier, starting in middle school. And we're already seeing fantastic impact from that, and we'll go into that a little bit as we go on. And I'm going to talk to you now about how we market all of this. So how we market it and how we build our students' capacity to take advantage of it. And this is a work in progress. We're pushing down earlier, so I think elementary is something that we are just starting to bridge into. So where they've always had career days and things like that, we're wanting to make this much more targeted work. They are also going to be doing some Zello lessons. So Zello is a platform that our students have access to through Clever, and it has the opportunity for students to explore their interests, their strengths, identify possible career paths, and do a lot of exploration. The great thing is this portfolio follows our students. So it can start in elementary school. They visit it year after year, and as they develop and change, this platform will change and evolve with them. So it's a really wonderful thing. And so this year is really, we've had it for a few years. We're really starting some concrete implementation this year. So we're really excited to see as these portfolios grow for our students. And we see that a lot more in middle school because this year newly we have career coaches in each of our middle schools. So it is a new position. We're growing the bones of it, but the work that they've done so far is fantastic. They've already met and helped to develop plans for our 8th grade students as we went in and pushed into all 8th grade classes already this school year. And so at this point, they're building their capacity. They're learning their abilities and their resources and becoming that strength for those students to develop these portfolios. And so our goal is to have all of our students have an individual career plan that they develop and edit and revamp year after year as they, again, are exploring who they are and what they want to do. Additionally, in middle school, we do, like I said, push into all of the classrooms and do a lot of information. And then we have parent nights and open houses for those students. And again, that's centered. We do have the application occurring at that time. So we want to make sure that everyone has all the necessary information. In high school, the developments and supports are ramped up even further. So we do have the career advisors in each of the high schools, and they really do an excellent job of informing and providing opportunities for our students as they're planning their next steps. And so one thing that we have done this school year, we're starting to really do, is continue that self-exploration. And you want to switch it up? That's okay. Continue the self-exploration, and there we go. Thanks. In high school, so that they are continuing to build and explore, because in high school is when they really need to start making those concrete decisions of what are you going to do with that, okay? So what scholarship should I be doing? Do I need to go to that school? Or if I want this career, what's my best pathway to get there? And we want to make sure that that plan is really diversified for our students. So we're really providing a lot of support around that. All right, so under Blueprint, we did talk briefly, but I wanted to just outline the post-college and career pathways, because I think one thing for our community to understand is all students are going to be tasked with getting into a post-college and career pathway. Sorry. And so we have a few options in Charles County. So of course, the CTE pathways that I've been talking about this evening. Additionally, we are going to have an AP pathway that's currently under construction, more information to come. And then finally, we also have early college and or dual enrollment, which is a continually growing in Charles County, but it's an option that students have starting in 10th grade. They'll gain information about that and can start to make some decisions. Another impact to support our growth in CTE is our middle school pilot program that's going on this year. So we have a few additional courses that are offered in our middle school. So we have Introduction to Engineering Design and Exploring Computer Science, which are two of our technology credits. So they're graduation requirements that students can earn in middle school, with the result of allowing for more space in their high school schedule for this exploration, for this targeted courses, opportunities for apprenticeship, early college, and things like that. So they can take advantage of all of those things that are offered. And all middle schools will have those next school year. There we go. All right, and I talked about this a little bit, our robust college and career exploration. The one aspect that I really want to bring light to is this is a partnership. And it is mandated through Blueprint, and it's really been a great exploration for us. But Charles County partners with the Tri-County Council, so our local workforce development, and College of Southern Maryland to support these efforts. So we call on the resources and expertise of our local workforce to drive how we are supporting our students as they are exploring and developing and creating these individual career plans. And our goal is to have every student have an individual plan that's updated yearly, and students make choices in high school directly connected to their personal interests and strengths. So that's really our goal, is for them to get in there and make those decisions. And the truth is, if they end up not liking it, that's okay. They're already at least exploring and utilizing the resources there. They've begun their journey. I think as adults, we know it never really ends. You just continue to explore and create and figure it out. So we want them to really just dive in and start. So that's all I have. Questions?
So, Mr. Lucas, if there are questions in the public around that presentation, if you're okay with that, we can have Rebecca and team respond to those, and then we can then proceed to people who have signed up. Okay? So do we have any questions in the audience for our CTE presentation or our staff? Could you come forward?
It's too high. Too small. Okay. Down. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions, so you just stop me if I'm doing too much. The first one is going to be around college and career for Pillar 3, and it entails having the career coaches in the middle school and the career advisors in the high schools, and you pointed to that. Can you explain a little bit more about what the roles of the career coaches in the middle school exactly is, and how we are making career exploration a little bit more intentional? Also, how are you including parents and community and caregivers into that buy-in process, if we are at all?
Okay, yes. So we are just phasing it in. So this year, I will say, our focus is building their expertise and knowledge. It's a training year to make sure that what they are pushing out is meaningful and targeted and tied to outcomes. But as this rolls out, phase 2, what we're going to see these career coaches doing as these students are identifying their areas of interest, what they really want to pursue, we're going to see things in our middle schools like small groups that are centered around, students that really are interested in hospitality and things like that, and pulling in community members, people from the workforce to support these small mentorship groups. Parents are going to be brought in the loop actually pretty soon. In January, we're going to be rolling out the opportunity for all of our parents to log into Zello and be able to see their students' profiles and keep up to date on that. And then we are going to be doing some really targeted information sessions that will provide education around a vast number of topics and ways to really address those topics with your students and things like that. So this year is our building year, and we have a lot of drafts going, and we're working and meeting with Tri-County Council weekly, I think, yes. And so I'm really excited about it, but this year you're going to see some little tidbits, but much more rolling out. And probably the next 2 years, it'll be robust.
The follow-up to that one is, as you are bringing communities, because this presentation's not in language, how are you bringing in your ESOL community as well? For Latinos in the Hispanic community, for us, Pathways in college is our economic mobility ticket. So how are you bringing the ESOL community in an intentional way?
So we did have an ESOL night for, do you want to speak to that?
I could.
Yeah.
So next week is our ESOL.
Let me give you your microphone because we're live.
Look, I could
Go
have done
for
it.
Oh, you can take it off.
All right, so next week, November 15th, is our ESOL night at Thomas Stone. And what we will be doing is we invited all of our ESOL families to come in. There'll be stations throughout where they can go over resumes. What are your options in going through? They'll do testing, what testing is needed for each post-secondary option. They will go through scholarships, financial aid, both FAFSA and MISFA. And they will have general job search opportunities and how to go about that. For all of those, there will be Spanish interpreters. We have flyers in Spanish. We'll do a Padlet that has a link that we'll send out. So that's one thing. That's what we're starting with.
And Zello will also be something that you'll go through the families with?
Yep, and then
Okay.
it's also in Spanish.
How do I put it back?
It does translate, yeah.
I have another question, but you stop me if there's, okay. Okay. The next one is, so the most recent poll by the National Parents Union shows that 64% of parents say schools should do more to ensure that students are college bound and that they are exploring different pathways and have equally good opportunities to prepare for a future after college and beyond. What is the recourse for students who are not selected via the lottery that you showed for a limited number of slots in these programs?
So that is why we have the other pathways that do not require an application. So we've tried to do a pretty concrete job of if there's an oversubscribed program, then offering it in a different way within the county. So for instance,
We use automotive as one, for example.
So automotive, we have one that's at North Point that you can apply to in 8th grade, and then there's another one in 10th grade that you can apply to at Stedham, yes. And so we do have, like for instance, if a student wanted to be in electrical and they didn't get in, then we are expanding and getting, looking into some options through College of Southern Maryland. And then additionally, we have this Apprenticeship Maryland program that students can have in their senior year. So if they have an individualized area of interest, we can really match them with an apprenticeship in that senior year as a graduation completer program.
And I know as this year is our building year, some of our students, though, that are not getting into those programs are facing those barriers to opportunity. So what do we do for those students that unfortunately are not getting in those programs or facing those opportunities?
So it would have to be an individual conversation. So like you would have to say, this student didn't get into this program, and I would be able to tell you what they wanted, what they should do instead, or ways that they can continue to explore in that career pathway in their next several years. But we do have a lot lot of different avenues. So let's say somebody applies to a program at North Point, they don't get in. If they get a letter that says they're either on the wait list or denied, they also get a letter with additional options that are available in our county. And so that information is sent to them as well.
Okay. I have another question on literacy, but do you want me to ask it later?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just add a couple of other things? So we need to move to be a district of options that tie kids to workforce opportunities as quickly as possible. And I think part of what you heard today about the blueprint is the intentionality to make sure that everybody has a very strategic pathway. So no longer is graduation our metric. It's what happens after graduation. Our metric of success for high school students is no longer graduation. We are expecting everybody to graduate. It is the preparation for their next step. So if they do the AP pathway, or they do the early college, or they do the CTE pathway, every one of our graduates should be tied to that. Are we there right now? No. But we are moving to ensure that every graduate is tied to one of those three areas. And we will become expanding the options for students. And I think Becky mentioned some work that we're doing with CSM. And I think probably later this week or early next week, we'll be ready to talk a little bit about that, so that if you don't get into this school, which a lot of people think it's make it or break it for them in terms of opportunities, and I have plenty of data to show that that's not the case, that there's options in other places, and that we maximize resources such as CSM to be able to conduct these pathways. So we are strategically building a proposition to all of our families that when you go to high school, you are thinking about high school as a way to prepare you for the next step. After 10th grade, we are focused on what are you going to do next, and how are you going to leave either with credits on hand, certifications that give you workforce industry that's competitive, and then specific skills that you can really transition into what you're going to do next. We need to show that data publicly, and we need to show improvement in that. And some of that data was presented in the state of the schools, and it'll continue to be presented in our strategic plan outcomes. One last thing that I thought was really important. During the summers, we have expanded our CTE exploration camps, and a lot of the families that sent their students to the camps, and thank you to the board because we provided transportation and it was a free opportunity. So if we really want our families to engage, it needs to be provided in that way. We're looking at expanding those options because kids loved trying things out. So Zello's wonderful. Those of you who have kids that are going into middle schools, you're going to learn this app. I have a set of girls right now in 7th grade. I am learning this app. More of our kids coming from elementary into middle school will know this app. There'll be a parent login at some point that we're going to roll out. Kids will be doing their interest inventories. But it is a lot of fun, the kids have said, when they get to put on scrubs and do the medical thing, and then turn around and do the biotech thing, and then be out there doing welding with their hands. It really comes alive. So we want to expand those opportunities as well. And I just urge families, when you're thinking about what happens in the summer, here's a free opportunity from the school system for your middle school students that I think you should try to pencil in into the summer program, into the summer plans, because students really enjoy just trying it out. Sorry, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Becky.
Yes, I think I might have one more.
Sir, please come forward. We actually
about
have,
CTE?
because we're streaming live, and so there's actually a viewership. I think we're up to 36 people right now that are watching live, so I'm very proud of that. Yes, I know. Thank you, whoever's watching. I can't tell, but they want to be able to hear your questions, so thank you.
I would like you guys to stop being heightish and putting everything up so high. I'm Anthony Phoebus. I'm a Charles County resident, live in Bryantown. I'm a retired Navy chief, and my questions pertain to technical fields. Now, I've heard about your career pathways. I had a question about who determines the student's career pathway. I'm not sure. I think that got answered. That's my first question. How do you determine that?
So truthfully, the student determines their career pathway. They decide what they're interested in. If it's an application program, they are the one that applies. And if it's a program that's offered in any of our schools, then they do it through course selection. And of course, parents are a part of that process as well. They do sign off on the application submission, and they also are an approval part of the course selection. But again, it's very personalized.
Okay. I'm also a cyber workforce professional. I don't know if I said that. What schools are offering cybersecurity courses for a career path?
So we have a specific cybersecurity pathway here at North Point High School that you can apply to in 8th grade. We do have a computer science pathway that is offered at each of the high schools, which is more overarching computer science.
How come the cybersecurity pathway is not offered at every school?
So they actually have a whole, and this is, I'm going to get a little in the weeds with this, but they have a whole infrastructure that's offline, so they can do all the hacking and things in a server that isn't online. So it's the cost that goes into that isn't something that we can replicate in every building.
I do want to just mention that with the cybersecurity and other programs, we do have this committee right now that's looking at what programs are being offered where, what's the interest of our students, what programs have a waiting list, what programs do not, and looking at that and determining whether there might be a need to expand. That's when we're also working with the College of Southern Maryland to get a good understanding of what they offer and can we take advantage of that. And cybersecurity is one of those areas that the College of Southern Maryland does offer. And so we have been in preliminary talks possibly for the future to be able to offer something there.
Yep.
Okay. What grades are the students allowed to attend the cybersecurity courses?
So if they get into that program, they would attend North Point starting in 9th grade, and they do take their first course in 9th grade.
So only North Point has
Has the
cybersecurity?
specific cybersecurity pathway.
Why is that? We had this gigantic school, St. Charles, costs almost $1 billion a bill, and there's no cybersecurity program.
There is a computer science pathway, and so we are looking also.
It's not the same.
So once again, I think one of these areas that we are looking is cybersecurity, and College of Southern Maryland just opened up on 2 of their other campuses new programs within cybersecurity, and that's why we're in some conversations for possible future opportunities that we can take advantage of the program that they offer at the colleges. Some of the things that we run into with our technical programs is the specificity of the teachers and what they need to know and be able to do. And sometimes it's very difficult, honestly, to find people that are experts in the area that we need. And so that's why another reason why we're looking at the College of Southern Maryland to take advantage of their expertise.
Okay, copy. I'm bringing this up because I live in Bryantown, and there's nothing close by except for St. Charles High School. And although we have cars, I'm just trying to make it easier, not just for my children. And when I was a computer lab manager in Pax River, and I believe I talked to the lady to your right, who was on the Tri-County Council, about students coming out of high school to come to my lab and work in my lab so they can get their certifications or get mentorship while they're obtaining their high school diploma. So, why isn't information technology?
Sir, can I just, we may want to take your information though at the end.
Do you want to become an
because I
approved
think you
apprenticeship site?
Yeah, you just said that you may want to be one of our internships or apprenticeship sites, and we may absolutely want to do that.
I left that job.
Oh, okay.
I work at the Pentagon now. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Sorry. The cybersecurity workforce is severely lacking in personnel, more jobs than people. Does Charles County offer CompTIA Security Plus certification for the students? And if so, are you guys paying for the test?
Yes, and yes.
Which schools offer that?
At North Point High School.
Only North Point.
Correct. Yes. And we are looking, they do offer that at College of Southern Maryland. We actually have an apprentice that just completed it or is in the midst of completing it currently. So it is a program that's offered there. So again, that partnership will grow so that we can expand. And like Mr. Lowndes said, we want to make sure that the instruction for our students is spot on. And just like if you think the industry is lacking, someone willing to leave the industry and teach it in Charles County Public Schools is even more lacking. So that's a big barrier that we're working through.
Okay. I have no further questions, but I will make a final statement. It's not a derogatory statement. This is more so a cautionary statement. Please be careful offering all these great subjects and all these great courses in one school or two schools. There are plenty of other students out there and other schools out there that could benefit from this opportunity. I don't have any further questions. If the board has any questions for me, I'm here. I'm willing to answer them.
I appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, he said it was number 3. I'm number 4. Are we at that part of the question and answer?
No, we're only getting questions for the CTE presentation, but then I think we are done with that. Anybody else have a question about the CTE presentation?
Yeah, just one quick one. I know there was a statement in regards to credentials. Just curious, do we have a catalog of credentials that are mapped to skills that we're using to kind of instrument them against the pathways, and how do we better understand what those skill to credential mappings are?
So we do, and they're individualized obviously by pathway, and so that's something that's housed in our HR department to say exactly what credentials we are looking for with each of the pathways. But yes, we do.
Okay. And is there any way for parents or just, community members to know what those are? I ask because the gentleman just asked about Security Plus as an example, and there's an assumption that if we're engaging that generation, we're providing credentials that are actually usable in the workforce. So I'm just curious what those credential types are.
So one thing I will say is the work that's going into CTE right now, and the Accountability and Implementation Board around Blueprint, what they are looking at specifically is what you're speaking of. The standards that are aligned to each of our CTE pathways, they're taking a deep dive so they can make sure to realign if necessary, to pull out new credentials, not only for the teaching staff, but also what are the outcomes for the students to make it sure it's tied in. So that's current work that's going on that will be trickling down to us.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to just throw my hand in there to assist with, we'll call it recommendations on credentials, similar to the gentleman that just came up. I work at Microsoft, and I do a lot at the intersection of AI and cybersecurity, and we'd love to just understand how we're funneling folks into career pathways that can be very lucrative, but also are high in demand based on, what we're putting together. So
well, that's great. Thank you.
So, sir, we need your name at the end of this as well. Thank you. Mr. Lucas, I think we are done with the questions specifically to CTE. So I think, Shelley, do we go through our process? Okay, so Shelley will walk us through our process for speakers that have signed up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shelley Mackey. I'm the Director of Communications for Charles County Public Schools. I'm going to tie it in really quickly to CTE and a slide that Ms. Brandt presented. Our department, the Office of Communications, actually has 2 student apprentices with us this year. One is a senior at North Point High School, interested in studying video production, and the second student is from St. Charles High School, is interested in graphic design. They started with our department 2 weeks ago. Great assets from 2 different schools, 2 different career paths. I just thought I would share that plug. We, I believe, have 5 speakers signed up this evening with numbers. I'm going to allow Ms. Small, who signed in, speaker number 1. If you want to go back to that mic, Ms. Small.
Hi, everybody. Long time no see. So I have a question around literacy because within Pillar 3, I'm not sure if everybody knows, we actually have literacy goals. Specifically on 3.3, we have something around English language arts, our comprehensive literacy plan for English language arts. And then down below, we also have our literacy training and professional development. I know our educators are going through letters training. Where are we currently in that goal to ensure that by the end of the year, 100% of our staff are trained in letters? Is there other literacy training and professional development, both for our educators and possibly our community? And can we please have a dashboard somewhere on the blueprint page or maybe the school improvement plan page where it shows where training and development is happening and where we are?
Are you okay if we take this question? So I'm going to have Mr. Lowndes answer about the letters training, but to give some context, so I think we need to explain what letters training is. I am actually one of the, along with teachers, that is taking the letters training this year. So every Wednesday, shout out to my cohort of teachers, Wednesday night from 4:30 to 7:30, we go through the online training. So Kevin, can you talk a little bit about our literacy plan and why Ms. Small is talking about the letters training? What is that training all about? Why? What is the requirement, and what funded that initiative for us?
Sure. So the letters training is linked to the science of reading. It gives the science behind the reading process, as well as the sounds of letters and how they're made and how you make them technically, and so that you're able to understand the process of teaching phonics and letters to our students. The blueprint is very clear as to all districts must be teaching the science of reading. And part of the way that we are funding it is the states gave a LEADS grant, which was aligned to specific areas within the blueprint to help school districts fund the trainings that are being required. The blueprint does require that every district within the state of Maryland train kindergarten through third grade teachers. By the end of this summer, 100% of all of our teachers must be trained, kindergarten through 3, as well as all special ed teachers and all ESOL teachers. So we started this process 2 years ago, where we started with our kindergarten or first grade teachers, and then we're at the point this year where we are finishing up our cohort of our third grade teachers. And so we will, by the end of this summer, have everyone had the opportunity and everyone that currently in the system be able to be trained in letters. And we are keeping track of folks, and we do know of the teachers that are currently within different cohorts. What we did try to do was we tried to spread it out a little while to get folks trained in it, because we started from 0 teachers being trained to having to train all of these teachers in this short period of time. And it is intensive, and it's like 7 to 8 weeks period of time that you have to develop, or devote, I should say, to the training. And so currently we have like 22 different cohorts of folks that have started in the summer, that have started in the fall, that have started in the late fall, that will be starting in the winter, and then that will be starting in the spring, to make sure that everyone is finished up on time to meet the requirement by the state.
Can you tell me where we are now? Do you think we're like 50% trained of staff, 35%? Like, where do you think we are?
Right now, I think there's like 3 more cohorts that are going to begin to train. And so I think so right now we've done all the kindergartens, all the first grades, all the second grade, and we're in the third grade, and we've probably done halfway through third grade.
I would say actually we haven't done all of second grade, because I have kids in second grade and my educators are still going through that training. So that's why I asked.
Okay.
We're in November and we still have educators that are still being trained. I just want to know where we are in meeting that goal.
So it's what we did was, and I don't know whether you have a new teacher to the county. But
long-term teacher for CCPS.
we are catching up and we're moving forward, and so that's where we began and where we are now, and we're keeping track of who's done it, who hasn't done it, and then contacting folks as to if they need the training and they haven't signed up for the cohort.
I love data, and I love a good dashboard. So this is why I would love to see a dashboard to see where we are in professional development and training for things like this, because it's not just part of the blueprint, and it's not not just like a New Year's resolution for us. It's also part of COMAR. We have to make sure that kids are reading by grade level, by the end of second grade at grade level, and it all ties into college and career. If our children can't read properly, they can't go into a pathway, they can't go to college, they're not going to be ready for that kind of rigor. So that's why I'm asking if that's a seed I can plant of showing that kind of data and transparency. That way I don't have to call your office all the time and ask. Then we could do that. That'd be great. Yeah. The other plug that I want to ask, ask and put a plug in, is around AI. I love that we have some parents and community here that were talking about AI, cybersecurity, things like that. For me as a parent, really are really exciting, and I just wonder of what we can do with all of that. And there is also, the Biden administration had put out the executive order around AI. So I want to know how our district is leading in that work, and I want that so bad. I want to know as a parent, how can I use it? How are we using it for instruction? How are we using it for ESOL? How are we using it for students with learning differences and social abilities? How can I use it as a parent at home? I know AI is already ingrained in a lot of things that we use, whether we know it or not. We're probably using it in our schools, but I would love to see how we are being intentional about bringing it to the community and telling a parent like me how I can use it.
Most certainly. Thank you for your question. I'm Charmaine Thompson, Chief of Instructional Technology. Whether you've heard of AR or not, and you're probably using it whether you know it or not if you got a smart device in your home, I currently put through 2 people on my staff through some AI professional learning. We're preparing in January to start having parent discussions, community conversations around AI in education. Part of that initial meeting we're going to have in January, we're going to put out a call for a workforce to develop recommendations on how the safe uses of AI as well as intentional purposes of AI. Obviously, it could be used for tutoring, it could be used for a wealth of things, and to also educate our students on the use of it, just as we would with internet safety. Obviously, there's some students already using AI, artificial intelligence, to write papers and understanding, policies around plagiarism and critical thinking. So we're excited to explore this. I did explore an organization that does provide professional learning. They partner with another school district in the area. However, they're bombarded with a lot of requests, so they're unable to kind of meet the needs. So I did reach out to them, and actually one of my staff members was just finishing up her first cohort on that. So I'm excited to bring it to Charles County. I think it has a lot of potential, especially meeting the gaps of where we have shortages in staffing, our ESOL students, as well as students that may be struggling. So again, I know we spoke on the phone about it the other day, so I'm really excited to bring it here. And matter of fact, I saw a news cast on it this morning. They were talking about AI again. I think it was Fox 5. So again, I'm excited to bring the topic here. I'm doing a chat with the chief tomorrow. All of you are welcome to register to attend if you like. My topic is internet safety, and within that chat I'm doing tomorrow evening, I was gonna, at the tail end of that session, kind of start introducing the concept of AI, because I think with internet safety it is very important. Just with any great technology tool comes dangers, so I also want parents to understand that as well.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No worries, thank you.
I'm a little taller. Cool. Thank you all so much. I wanted to talk really quickly about the youth engagement advocate position that you all have been discussing about expanding it to do searches of students. And thank you, Board Member Creamer. I'm trying to call everybody by their professional names and everything. I want to thank you for adding in the policy to, I guess, give parents and students some kind of knowledge on where the reasonable belief is, separate from reasonable doubt, things like that. And I also saw that you all added into it saying or mandating that an attempt must be made from the people doing the searches to the parent after following them to let them know, hey, here's what happened and everything. I want to know, have you all looked into, or would you all expand it kind of, or give it more teeth behind it, instead of saying like you'll attempt to make a call, because we've all been somewhere and it's been like, oh hey, we attempted to call you, that means we called and rang twice so we hung up. But putting it, you must contact the parent, guardian, whoever, say once, twice, 3 times. So it's like, hey, we're trying everything, but also put it in there that we are gonna leave a voicemail if we can, and send an email saying, hey, here's what happened. Here's why the search, why we wanted to conduct the search. Here's what we found when we did the search. Here's, if you feel like your rights have been violated, here's how you can follow up on that, and have it in voicemail and email. Make sure there's no confusion of, well, you told me this when on the voicemail, but the email says something different. As we've all seen, communication does get crossed. So I want to start with that. Is that something you all are even open to doing to make it kind of more, give more teeth and more power to the parents to be like, hey, here's how we're going to make sure we have open communication, and also here's ways, if you feel like your rights are violated, you can take some action against it. Anybody?
Anybody feel free? So just so I understand, so the two things: one, to have some sort of confirmation or multi-way of contacting a parent that their child was searched. That was the first question, right?
Yeah.
So I would ask the superintendent, is the process, I mean, this is even before the policy changed. The policy was there forever. We just added definitions and the youth engagement advocate. So typically, was that done by a phone call and or email? Dr. Jones or somebody?
So the alerting of the parents is the question, right?
Correct, yes.
So typically that is, typically that is done by a phone call to the parents. But as you mentioned, it is something that is required as a part of any investigation when there has been a search that is done, that the administrator, and in this case, the youth engagement advocate, they are required to contact the parent at the very least after the search has been completed. But I think what the policy is speaking to is that efforts will be made or can be made, I don't remember the exact wording, to alert the family perhaps prior to making that, doing the search. But it really does depend on what the item or items we may be concerned about, being on a student, as to whether or not we really think we got to make a judgment call, whether or not it makes sense to wait and call after the fact, or do we need to do this search now because there could be a situation of danger without making a phone call. And so it's not required that we get permission per se, but we absolutely are be sure that families are in the know and made aware that there was a reason to do a search, and here's how that panned out and what happened.
Awesome. The one thing I'll say is that, like, in the policy, or I guess before you all added the part that Ms. Creamer had mentioned before, there was nothing in the policy like explicitly for the YEO that said like you have to contact the parent afterwards. And I guess I'm saying, would the board, I guess, be open to expanding it, not to just say you have to attempt a call, but you have to make a call, leave a voicemail, and send an email, so at least parents know there will be some form of communication? Because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we and the board probably is the better one to answer whether or not anything will be changed in it. But I'll just tell you best practice, and they will operate exactly as the administrators do in this regard. Best practice is that a parent will be contacted when there is a need to do a search. And typically that does happen after the search because we're concerned about what it is we're searching for.
No, definitely.
And so that goes without question. Parents are always contacted when there is a search that's done. As far as any wording that may need to be changed or considered, that is, yes, a question for the board, and I think Ms. Kramer was about to.
The one thing I'll say is that I hope that we kind of also take into account of saying when things typically happen, or that's like standard practice, is that standard practice, if it's not written down in policy mandating you to do it, could be something, could come up, oops, I didn't do it, but there's nothing said I had to do it, it's just normally what we do.
Understood. I don't know that that has been a concern that we've heard, that parents were not contacted when there was a search, but received, and so at this point, if you want to talk about changes, I'll turn to the board. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, please.
Thank you for that. So as you know, a lot of deliberation, you were following this particular topic, Mr. Child. So a lot of deliberation went back and forth. And I think there were some conversations of, there are board policies, right? And then there's the superintendent rules. And then this, we also discussed perhaps getting into more of the weeds of like what you're talking about, like attempts and things like that. Some additional detailed language would really look better and make more sense to go into like the student code of conduct. And so, Dr. Jones, I don't know if you want to comment more on that, but so you don't typically get into procedurally exactly how things are carried out in terms of the policy. So I think that might be a little bit more too detailed for the policy language itself. I think what the superintendent had presented as the edited policy was kind of what we thought would be a compromise, I guess, to that, to provide more clarity to the community and the parents that, that they were looking for. And just remember, a lot of us are parents too, right? So I have a child that attends school here. Several of my colleagues do as well. So we consider this from multiple vantage points, right? So how will I feel if this situation were to happen and my child were to be in this position? As a parent, how would I feel? But also recognizing the role of the board and then the role of the superintendent and her staff. And so I think that, there was some discussion about putting some additional information and some additional, details about the process in the code of conduct. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Jones to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. The search and seizure process is in the Code of Conduct. I don't believe, and again, I don't have that document in front of me, I don't believe that it spells out that parents will be contacted X amount of times or attempted or what have you. But our administrators are trained, and then again, in this regard, they will act just as our administrators do when it comes to search and seizures, that they're required to contact a family. And so that expectation won't change for the youth engagement advocates. It'll be exactly the same. And so as far as the code of conduct, the document itself, the committee that develops it, certainly I'm sure that that'll be something that will come up when that committee reconvenes this year as we begin to look at the document for next year. So I anticipate that there'll be some discussion around it. And so could there be some language adjustments in the code of conduct? That's a possibility. But at this point, we are comfortable with the guidance, the expectations that our administrators and youth engagement advocates do have in this regard, that when that's necessary, parents are absolutely contacted.
Awesome. Thank you. And I guess two more kind of questions. One, I guess, is more in line for you, I guess. For the reporting process of the investigation, once the investigation is concluded, yes, you call the family members, all that. Is there any sort of paper, email, something tangible, a parent can say, all right, cool, I can look at this document to see what the investigation was, when it happened, where in the building, all of that? Because if it's just a phone call, it could be the thing of I'm a parent, I pick up the phone, I talk to them, and then the next day my child, at night, my child comes home, they say, hey, this happened. Well, that wasn't what we talked about on the phone. And then we go to the school, it's, well, I didn't tell you that. We told you this instead. And it comes a he said, she said story. And it's not physically written down, hey, this is what the school said officially.
So the official documentation of an incident that gets investigated and then shared with the family does come by way of an office referral. That's typically where the incident is documented and then given to the administrator to investigate. And as part of the administrator's investigation, they may have to talk to student witnesses, get statements from obviously the person involved, and then perhaps others who were involved or witnessed what was going on, and that documentation all pretty much comprises the investigation, as well as any statements that the administrator may have needed to summarize themselves. And then that information is summarized typically on any sort of disciplinary notice, suspension form, for instance, that there's typically a brief summary on the suspension form, and then there's codes that go along with that. But that information is, in essence, all of what is comprised of an investigation. Then when families want to know kind of what happened, that information is relayed typically by a phone call or parent conference. The parent comes in, explain to the family what happened. They may be reading from the notes that they have taken. They may know the situation well enough not to read from it, but as a part of the investigation, obviously they have gathered enough information to be able to speak intelligently to the family, and to share that information before rendering that decision. And that's pretty much what it consists of. As far as families getting copies of any sort of documentation, they typically do not unless it is a suspension form. They may get a copy of the referral, but it's only for their particular child that they would get. The rest of that information was for investigative documentation purposes, and then the administrators meet with the families and make sure that they are aware of what took place.
Cool.
And all of that it follows the code of conduct. How we go about administering whatever the discipline should be. Typically, it's based on the code of conduct.
Awesome. Thank you for that too. And the last one, sorry about being so long, is about doing, I guess I'll turn this way for this too, is about contacting the parents beforehand. I know that Ms. Jones or Dr. Jones, you definitely mentioned about how if you have like certain circumstances of, say if someone has a gun or something, then it's like, hey, we need to handle this at this moment. But if you have where they suspect a child has a vape on them, is that something that we can say as a community, we don't want the parents to know, hey, beforehand, we suspect your child has this on you, we're gonna search your child for this, and we'll also let you know what happens after we find it, especially in those cases where it's not a life-threatening thing. It's something that probably a lot of children have, but it needs to be dealt with, but the parent should be involved rather than afterwards. Because then you are gonna get people who feel like, I'm just being told stuff after it happens, and what if it's a parent who's like, wait, okay, if you do all this, I'm 5 minutes away, I'll come there and be a part of the search, or be a third party.
Thank you, Mr. Childs, for that. Well, as you know, I did not vote for the policy, so that's on the record. But that was one of the things that I think that we should have put in the policy, because I want to give more power to the parent, because I'm looking on the other side as a parent, and if the search is not that serious, I should be the one to come to the school and to see. But I understand if it's serious, gun, violence, or things of that nature, it should be. But it should be something in there that says that the parents must be involved. So I will hope next year when we revisit this that we could get that in there. But I am for parents having control over that piece for their child, because they are the guardians of their children. So that's
Thank you for your support in that.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Jamila Smith with Mr. Childs. First, thank you for your questions. Definitely appreciate the exploration of the youth advocate within our school system and what the board voted on. And just to be clear, the board did vote to support this position, regardless of how individual members may have voted. The board as a whole voted to pass it. And so you phrased it as if a child were to have a vape or something that is not serious.
Not like physically life-threatening. Like, we can distinguish between like a knife and a vape.
Can we? So one, we don't necessarily know what's in a lot of these vape pens. So if a child has inhaled or ingested something, one, the school system has assumed control of your child when you drop your child off. They are responsible for the health and the well-being of every single student in that building. And I'm speaking as a parent who has a child in high school. So in the event that a child has ingested something, we don't exactly know what it is, they should not have it. The school has to act expeditiously to ensure that that child is safe. And if for some reason they've shared it with their friends, now we have other students who have ingested something that we don't know exactly what it is. And the school system has to take deliberate action to secure and protect all those students. So they're not necessarily able to pause and say, please sit here while we try to find your parent, so that your parent can come down here while you're in the process of chemically going through or physically going through what you just ingested. They have to act expeditiously to, again, protect all students. And that's exactly why the board voted in the way in which it did as a whole to support this piece of policy. So hopefully you understand that. I'm hopeful that other community members do as well. I know it was said previously that many of us on this board do have children in school. So, and many of us who have kids in high school, because this is at the high school level, are also beholden to this policy in a very personal way. So ensuring that not only our individual children are safe, but also every single child in the system in high school is also safe. So I trust that the policy will be executed accordingly, but we're also going to be watching very closely to see how things are being implemented. Because of course we know that words on a page sometimes don't always play out the way in which we intended them to play out. So we will be watching closely over the next several months, year, to see the implementation of it and how things go. So, and hopefully you're able to go back to our last board meeting to also hear our student board member who was able to share from the student's perspective what her thoughts were on the position and kind of how she felt about it. And hopefully that addresses some of your concerns and questions.
All right, cool. Definitely. Thank you.
I'd like to add something as well, Mr. Childs. As you know, I've been very open. I've practiced criminal law in the past. So this is something that is very near and dear to me. So it was not an easy decision to make, to be candid with you, because as you know, my daughter just graduated out. Oh, I'm sorry. You can't hear me?
It's better now.
Was it an echo? I apologize. Yeah, my daughter just graduated out. I have 2 young sons. And so I don't need to tell you the fear that goes through me as a mother of 2 young black males. And so this was not something that I instantly supported. We had a lot of questions. Ms. Kramer and I met with Dr. Navarro, with our board attorney, to discuss some ways that we could not necessarily soften this, but further explain. I fully appreciate that parents do want to be involved. I, as a parent, would want to be involved. But to Ms. Smith's point, it sounds good in theory until you have a school like North Point with, give or take, 1,800 students, and the swiftness where you have to move, because you don't always know what you don't know in that moment. And the priority has to be the student safety. It has to be the staff safety. So, of course, when practical, parents will be notified, but oftentimes it cannot be that way. And it's not because we don't want it that way. It's because we have to look at safety first. That has to be the priority. Anytime the students step in this building, they're under our care. And so you're voluntarily, not you necessarily, but parents, you're turning over, community, you're turning over control and custody of your children for those hours to this school or to whatever school. So it cannot be something as simple as, well, I think it might be a vape pen, but I don't really know. I think they might be okay, but I don't really know. Because meanwhile, you have these students that can't fully understand the consequences of what they may have taken. Honestly, may not even know what they may have. And so it's not a case where we want to exclude parents. And I really hope that you understand that. It's not that we're disregarding your concerns or parents' concerns, but you always in any decision have to weigh all the factors, and it has to be, and that's what we're elected to do. Sometimes we have to make the unpopular decisions because we feel it's for the benefit of the greater good. Now, with that said, I said on the record, I'm very open to revisiting this. Not that to revisit the entire policy, but in particular to revisit what this looks like once implemented. Because again, this is a very small portion of what the Youth Engagement Advocate's job is. This is not there, they're not there to search students primarily. They're not there to look for things that are not there. They're not there to make things up. And I think that there's a healthy mistrust, and I understand for some people where that comes from. So I don't want to discount that. But also for me, it was an intermediate step before involving an SRO, who very often is law enforcement. And then that escalates it to another level. So that was a lot of the rationale that, a lot of conversations went behind this. This was not a, yes, of course, we're going to support this policy. We pushed back and we edited and we discussed. So please consider that there was a lot that went into this, and it still may not be a perfect policy. There are obviously always things that we could revisit, but a lot of what you're raising is more the day-to-day, what that actually looks like. And that, as Ms. Smith has said and as Dr. Jones has said, that's on the superintendent. That's where we have to trust our staff to know what's best for our students. Now, if we get feedback that there are some concerns, we absolutely can address those. All right, so in answer to your question, thank you.
Let me say something real fast. I just want to make sure I restate what I said. I said I was the one who disapproved it. The board in whole, it was the way that it was voted. It was in the majority. And as you know, the majority rules. So I just want to make sure it's clear that I was the one. And I want to express and answer your question in route of how you stated it and let you know why I said what I said. So just making sure that the board in its own was a majority. And yes, we all agree since it was a majority, but me, myself, I did not agree at that time. So I just want to set that for the record.
Oh, definitely. Okay. I mean, I think the public likes it when people kind of explain their vote and say, hey, I get it, we all are a board, but hey, I voted a certain way, even if it's separate than from everyone else. And I guess last thing, wrapping up, I'm sorry, is I know you all said after getting the reporting back, you're going to make a look at it and all that. Is it anything in policy that mandates that the schools report back to the board and make these reports public to say, hey, at this school within this quarter, we got X amount of searches. Only 3 of them out of 10 of them found anything. Here's the reasons for the searches, and if the parents sought any action after it for discrimination or anything.
So what I will say is we have incident reports that we publish on the website. We have to report those, and I have to go back and check because we do report when something results in like weapons, what type, we have to report all that to the state. Let me go back and see how we report and how many searches. I have to say that a lot of the searches that have been done, and I'm not glad, but a lot of the things that we are finding these days when we ask, can you take what's in your pocket out, which is how we do searches. We don't go in and tap, sorry, but we say take whatever you have in your pockets. One of the takeaways that's my concern is that those kinds of searches are yielding more and more vaping or drugs. And the conversation that I really want to get into is there's the vaping devices that we're finding are marijuana or more. And the conversation I want to get into, and the sheriff and I have been talking to students every month. Dr. Jones comes with us. Now Dr. Abney is going to join us, is the copious amounts of use of vapes as a vehicle for drug consumption in young people. And it's less about weapons, although last year we had lots of weapons, or different types of weapons, and we report that as well. But the conversation I want to have is more around how do we have this conversation in a context that has now legalized marijuana use. But I, as an educator, will always say the developing brain of a young person that goes up to age 23 or 24 has different impacts. And so what I'm concerned about is when we do these searches, we like put out your pockets, you're walking kind of droopy, your heart is elevated, the nurse is like, what's going on? We are increasingly finding younger and younger and more young people trying things out. The sheriff, if he were sitting next to me, I can echo exactly what he would say. His concern is the lacing of fentanyl that comes with that. And we are very worried about that. We've put out some social media feeds for our families and so forth. And so yes, we can talk about the search piece, but the reality is what I am finding when we ask a young person to take out their stuff is that it is tied to drugs. And at some point, the conversation I also want to have is how do we continue to have conversations with families around the increase? What you do as an adult and what is now legal is not my concern. My concern is a developing brain and a lot more exposure to young people earlier and earlier to drugs that can be consumed in a variety of ways. And so I just say that, I know that's not your question, but that's my reality. When I look at every single incident report in this county, and when I look at what's coming through, that is why the sheriff and I are meeting with students every month in every high school to talk and ask them, how do we best get to you in a way that you will listen? We look like dinosaurs to them, so who's the messenger that you may consider making different decisions? And of course, and like I said, the sheriff's biggest worry is obviously the marijuana, but the other drugs laced with fentanyl, which we all know we have a crisis right now. So just wanted to add that, because that's our lived experience as we look at this conversation, and I'm glad Ms. Smith brought it up.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to move on to our next speaker, Mr. McFarland. You want to take the mic, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, all.
Good evening.
My name is Kurt McFarlane. I have been a Charles County resident for, my daughter's gonna be 21 years. And I've got a lot of stuff on my mind here. And I want to say something that I know you guys haven't heard, you've heard too much of. I know you've heard it a lot, but I want to be the one to say it as well. I want to thank all of you for your service. I know you hear it a lot from a lot of people, but I understand how hard your jobs can be. School administrators, volunteers, teachers, the whole nine. I understand how hard your jobs can be. I haven't done it myself, but as somebody who has volunteered a lot in civic organizations, it's hard. And you don't get the praise and appreciation that your positions deserve. So I want to be the one to say that to you if no one else does. My question is this, and I posed this question to the wrong person last week, and he chucked it over the fence to you guys, as he should have. That's Reuben Collins. And my question is, have you all considered having a mandatory parent volunteer system in Charles County? Has that come up at all?
Explain what that would look like.
What that would look like is having each parent that has a student in the Charles County school system volunteer at least 10 hours per year from pre-K through high school. All right, now I understand. To me, it's like, 10 hours, no big deal. I volunteered when my son was at Davis. I volunteered once a week, twice a week sometimes in the lunchroom. No big deal. Kids, take them to the bathroom, or say, yes, you can go to the bathroom, quiet down, what have you, right? But just 10 hours. I originally thought it was thought of saying 20, and I really want to say 20, but I'm thinking 10. I think we can get away with without everybody here being replaced during the next election. But I feel strongly about personal responsibility, and I think if we don't have something like this, we are going to keep going down the path of what I term the Starbucksification of America, in which people feel that, and no offense to taxpayers, I'm one myself, where people feel just because they pay their taxes and they buy their homes in a particular place that all of a sudden the whole world is owed to them. That's not the case. This thing of ours requires a bit more input. I haven't done my fair share. I feel I've done a lot. Right? But I haven't done my fair share, and I think if we can get a lot of, especially if we can get the parents to do a little bit more, just a little bit, again, 10 hours. You've got a lot of parents in Charles County, right? 10 hours a year. They can find 10 hours. I don't care if you work the double shift, the night shift, the third shift, what have you. You can find 1 hour a week. Saturday, Sunday, we develop a way to administrate it, right? Heck, you got Parent View on the apps, like here's your Parent View. No, you sign up for your volunteer opportunities this year. No, all the easy stuff is gone. No, you can't volunteer in the library, but you can sweep a hallway, you can do something, right? Trust me, when I was in the lunchroom and the lady told me, you can volunteer in the library. I'm like, well, I could have gotten the library. Guys, it's quiet in the library. Goodness. But I feel strongly that you can explore something like that. Yes, you'll probably get this whole place filled up, with parents, which is a good thing. Getting voters mad at you, sometimes, okay, now you're mad. You're paying attention. Thank you. But I feel strongly that that's something that that will activate the parents residents, voters, citizens. And that's, let me say one other thing, and I think that's the other thing that's been missing in this conversation, it's missing in a lot of school conversations, is people are missing out on what the whole purpose of education was to begin with. It was to develop the minds of the citizens, not workers, citizens. Okay, I'm all for AI, I'm all for computers in the classroom, what have you, although we can have a longer conversation about that. But if we don't have citizens trained in the ways of citizenship, this whole thing falls apart, right? And I'm not talking about 4 or 5 years from now, I'm talking about the next 200 years. Okay, so I would like to get, if somebody has an opinion on that, or if I can just state it and I can just move on, but I think that's a really good idea. And if it's something you guys have considered and you've tried and it hasn't worked, let me know that as well.
So thank you very much for your comments, and I think I can speak on behalf of the board for that. We really appreciate your words. To directly answer your question, I would say no, it's not something that the board has considered as far as mandatory. But there are numerous volunteer opportunities, and when we're done speaking, I think the superintendent can elaborate on that. I'd be interested to know, though, and I look over here, if that's something that a board could actually do. I don't know.
Mr. Schwartz.
You don't have the authority, and I don't have the authority to mandate on a citizen to do that. And I think the lawyer next to you would advise you that way. We don't.
No one listens to you now. Don't listen to you now.
We went to high school
together.
We went to high school together.
When you said you volunteered during lunch, I just saw a big heart. So whatever you say, I'm all for it. So we cannot make, obviously, we don't have any exercise and power to do it. I love the concept of empowering and getting parents themselves to think of ways, and this is one of these big partner in education things that we need to think about. How do we make it easier for people to see themselves to give at least 10 hours a year to be able to be in our buildings? Because I think the more that you're in our buildings, you appreciate the amazing staff and the things that they do every day. So I just, but you don't have the power. The answer to that is you don't have the power to make.
Yeah, and we have a number of things. We have something every year called for the past 5 years, called the Be the Difference Award, and where we recognize volunteers in our school system, both individuals, businesses, and community organizations. And so we really appreciate when people give of their time and their talent. And it's, I think, like, just reflecting back, in elementary school you tend to get a lot more volunteers, right? And then it kind of wanes in middle school, and then if your kid plays a sport in high school, right, you're gonna join the boosters, or you're gonna have to work the snack bar or something. So I think just continuing to come up with ideas and ways so that parents, and when you say volunteer, I think just the presence helps, right? I mean, they don't necessarily have to be doing something that's directly, like in elementary school, they were maybe making, this was when they could make copies for the teachers. We don't do that anymore. But they were helping teachers do the grunt work. But if they're just there and the kids see their presence, I mean, that's powerful, and that goes a long way. So it doesn't answer your question about how we can get it done, but I think we're universally in agreement. And I'll be quiet if the other board members want to talk.
Yeah. So let me just say for the record, he's always been a problem child. Hello, Kurt. So as soon as you said that, my first thought was the enforceability. I know we can't enforce that. Maybe what we can do is encourage parents. Maybe if we explain to them why they're needed and how they could be useful in classrooms. Like my oldest, your daughter's 21, mine is almost 19. And so we've always had some version of like a classroom parent or a lead parent, someone that maybe helps to galvanize the other parents. That's something they could do virtually. I know in this particular area we have a lot of commuters. So we have a lot of people that might spend 2-3 hours a day on the road. So that could limit. But maybe if we put something together, letting parents know, hey, this is what the need is. This is what you can do. I know the PTOs do a lot. I know we have a number of parent volunteers. But for some people, they just need to be asked. And perhaps that is something that we could do a better job of just being very direct. Listen, parents, this is something you could help with. If you want to be more informed on what goes on in your schools, then please join us. Come to things like this. As Dr. Navarro jokes, said, join our millions of viewers.
Yes.
You know, come to our board meetings. There's so many spaces where parents could fit in, and we welcome that. You know, many of us have visited almost all of the schools at this point. Some who've been on longer probably have been to all of the schools. They all look different. They all, more than once, right? They have different cultures. They have different climates. And I will never say that a parent can be too involved. I would love every parent who can. And I can't speak for all, because I know some, for whatever reason, cannot. But for those who can, I would welcome something like that, where they personally feel responsible and accountable. Because to your point, we're building the community for our citizens. And so even if you don't have children, if you're a retiree, if you're a grandparent, you know, right, exactly. You feel invested enough to say, you know, like the gentleman that spoke earlier, you know, I work for Microsoft, or I'm in cybersecurity, this is what I can offer. That's absolutely what we're striving for. So with that said, we'd love to get your contact information and perhaps
Not a problem. It's not a problem.
see what you can lead. But thank you for that. I wish we could enforce that. Yeah, we would probably all be one-term incumbents, but it would be worth it.
Sorry, a quick thing before you start there. Would it be, I guess probably wouldn't be a law you could pass either, because it always comes down to forcing someone.
Yeah, you can't really enforce those things.
types of things.
We have conversations in public education around if your kid doesn't come to school, what can you do with parents? That's law enforcement, and we can't do that. But I'm going to follow you to your car to get your information tonight.
It's not a problem.
I think the question is, there's a saying, do you bring more flies with honey than with vinegar? That's the saying. And I think the question here is for us to challenge ourselves and quantify. We have our Office of Community Engagement, and we want to one of the things in our strategic plan on Pillar 3 is to quantify the engagement, not just of parents, but of anybody in the community, and we're working to quantify how many partners we engage and bring into the school system to work with our young people. How do we increase, our goal this year is 100% of working PTOs in schools, because we suffered through the pandemic. And then we want to quantify how much more engagement are we getting our families and our community involved in the schools. So there is a quantification of it, and I think that what you bring up is food for thought for all of us to think about. How do we make it easier, more tangible, whether you are a working parent at different times, whether you don't speak English, there's a place for you, whether you are an elementary school parent but really like high school kids better, there's an option for you, and that's what Sylvia Royster's office thinks about all the time, and how to quantify it, and I would love some additional thought partners in that.
Indeed. One idea I did have a long time ago, and I'm sorry I don't want to take up a lot of time from those who may also have questions, but we also have requirements for students' volunteer hours. Am I wrong with that?
No, that is the graduation.
The graduation requirement, right. What about a point system? No, you couldn't do that either. I was going to say point system for parents. If the parents show up, the kid gets an extra 0.25 increase in their GPA.
No, because we don't want to do the opposite. We don't want to penalize a student for parents' inactions.
No, not penalize. No,
Right.
I mean,
But I
either
think,
you get the grades or
but
you
if
don't.
you get more points because your parents do show up, you do create an inequity based on an adult decision rather than a student decision. But I'm going to pick your brain too. I mean, there's a lot of really good options and ideas to do this. The point is, if communities are in our schools, we all benefit. Teachers, we have less I mean, I said this at the State of the Schools. We have less teachers leaving the profession because the community is involved. The community as a whole feels like they're invested in their schools, and whether they have children in school or not, and the majority of our community does not have children in schools, they still feel that schools are valuable to them. So it is a huge benefit the more people we engage in our schools every day. Plus, why wouldn't you want to be around our kids? Our kids are wonderful, and they're funny, and they're awesome, and so they just make you stay younger. So instead of getting a facelift, come into any one of our schools and you will forever be young.
No, I was going to say, in the military, when we was overseas, when we traveled, for them, they had a great marketing strategy for parents. They involved the students. The students would come home, especially my boys would say, "Mom, such and such parents came. You haven't came." They kept saying it. So you felt guilty. So I took off from work and I went, once a week, because every week they tell you, such and such mom came, this mom came, and it creates a certain urge for you to want to do it. So it was one of those things, catchy things. They involved the students into the marketing piece, and so that moved the parents to get involved. And when it got to high school for them, what they did was then it was not so much as the students, it was so much as the teachers asking you to do certain things. And so, you make time and you come do it for your students. But the school created a great marketing tool. So I never forget that marketing tool, because all the way from elementary all the way to high school, I was involved. So.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's fine. It's all right. Sorry.
I'm gonna put it right here so you. Rogers, next, please.
You're good. Well, real quick, if it's okay. So, I think you have a brilliant idea, and though we can't mandate it, and it's impossible, we can't. I would be open to, and we do, but expanding the incentives that we offer to get more parental volunteers and volunteers in general in the school. As a father, my kids are my kids. I want to see what they're learning. I want to be a part of that, and also, not just here, but on a national level, there is a divide between teachers and parents and students. And the best way to connect and build that bridge is for the parents and volunteers to be in the school. I think it's an excellent idea. It just, we can't mandate it. I wouldn't be in favor of mandating it, but I am in total favor of offering any incentives that we can. The more volunteers we have, not to beat a dead horse, but as the superintendent stated, the more volunteers that are in a school, the better that school is, the better that school feels. It's just a much better environment, and everybody wins from that. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Why I bring that up is because the conversation around awareness and marketing, I think, is super critical to getting more parents activated. We hear all the time, hey, we want to get involved. We have no idea what to do. Right? No one has engaged us. We don't get emails. We're not on this. We're not on that.
That's an excellent point. You need to be asked.
Before we assume that there's a need on people who really don't want to and position mandate, I like the approach of let's drive awareness, create incentives, and then get to a point where we really got where it needs to be reached. Because to your point, because I think there's just a lot of people who have no idea, what can I do? Give me something to do, tell what the menu is, and it's accessible to me. I mean, my schedule doesn't just allow it, I don't have to get a babysitter, whatever, maybe I'm now equipped to actually
That's a good point.
That's a great point. And
Thank
I
you.
just want to add that something that I thought about, Ms. McFarland, when you were speaking, some PTOs, and as Dr. Navarro pointed out, we have a goal this year of 100% participation at all of our schools with PTO. But some PTOs create a list, like you were just suggesting, sort of like a menu, right? And they send it out to everybody and say, these are the things we need or the teachers need. And like basically whatever you can do, put your name next to it or, reply and say, I can do this task. If it's just, we need granola bars donated for the teacher's breakfast on Friday because you don't have time to come in or whatever, spend a lot of time. Can you pick them up? Can you bring them to the school? Things as small, that take a small amount of time as that, as a time commitment as that, to all the way up to
volunteers for field trips, where we need you all day long. You have to take off your job, use your PTO for this, you know what I mean? Right. But they create a menu option, and I think that's something that, maybe our PTOs could share to help, provide opportunities to parents to kind of meet them where they are. What do you have? Because to Dr. Navarro's point, whatever you have to offer, we can find a place for you. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, we have millions of viewers at home, and we're recording it to show it to the other million that are going to watch it after the fact. Thank you for coming up to the mic.
I think they turned it off, though. There we go. What I loved about the volunteering at Davis is that they sent an email. You click on it, you go to a website, you filled it out. It's like, oh, lunchroom, this day, this time. Ding, and I showed up on that day and that time. So to your point, they made it a little bit easy. The advertising was there. I mean, the awareness was there, because I get a ton of emails from this school system. I got the text message reminded me yesterday that you're having this tonight. I thought it was last night. I got dressed. My wife was like, "You're an idiot," so I had to take off the clothes, and now I'm here tonight. But the Davis model, I think, worked well for me.
And your clothes look very nice. But just to add quickly, Davis still does have that policy in terms of how they're reaching out to parents to request them to volunteer. But I also want to give a quick plug for the culture and climate plans that schools are presently working on, and sort of getting some of these ideas sort of pushed into the schools. I've heard a lot about schools sort of making a list of a menu of options available to families, but actually asking families, how do you want to be engaged? What would be interesting to you? What skill sets do you believe you have that you can push into our school to sort of liven and brighten and just make our school the best school system possible? So it's more than just asking it's more than just demonstrating what's available, but asking, what can you bring? So it's a two-way sort of partnership, a two-way conversation, but love these ideas. Definitely want to plug the school and the culture and climate surveys that are out and pushing some of that information into our schools. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
No problem at all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having this. This is actually my first time even being a part of something like this, and so I am excited to be here, even though I have a 28-year-old son who went through college, and now my youngest daughter, who is 5 years old. I'm excited to be here, and this may have been just a perfect timing for me to come up, because what you actually said is something that I have been desiring to do, is how to volunteer in the school system. So I think not even making it mandatory, it is my desire to be participating and helping out whatever way I can, volunteering hours, and to ensure not just for my own kid, but I have a more appreciation now that after 20 years in IT, after the pandemic, for the last 3 years, I stayed home homeschooling my kids, and so for the first time in my life, I have a greater appreciation for what teachers do, and really have blown my mind to see how do they do this with such a large classroom. And so my heart is now in a place of being an advocate for students and for teachers, because I see from both perspective and the challenges that you guys face every day. So I'm here because I'm being driven in this direction. I still love IT. I'm actually taking some courses on childhood education, just trying to figure out how can I be an advocate and get involved in the system where I can make a difference at the end of the day. So that is my heart desire. So I stand here today as a new face, and hoping that I will be around more to find out more about the system. How does it work, and how can I better be an impact and an influence for our generation to come in any avenue sees fit? So I just want to say that. So that's a good suggestion. So you were right on point with that. With that said, I have so many questions to ask, but I'll try to, I know the time is getting along, but I have a daughter who is in 11th grade, and her big thing with conversation now is college. And so if you don't know, or if no one's having this conversation, if you have a very smart, intelligent person, a young lady or a student who listens and kind of know her way, but, even around dinner conversation or any adult, one of the biggest things, the conversation about college is the financial concern, right? The fear of that, because why people may look successful, the biggest thing they're always saying, I'm still paying off student loans, right? And so that is bringing about a fear of what will my future look like? I'm going to have all these student loans. Is there something that you guys are offering to help students navigate that process? Because at the same time, you could push them away from college, while even though those programs are good, the CTE program, what if that isn't their really true desire, but somehow they're being swindled because, it's like this burden of, I'm going to be in debt, because they see their parents struggling every day. I am still paying student debt. Is there something that you guys have or you're putting in place to help to guide them or put them on a plan where you don't have to repeat the cycle as your parents? Is there something, is there other avenue, is there other options? Because, now my daughter's like, I guess military is the only option, which I know her heart desires. She wants to go to college, right? But maybe going to the military can fund school. And so there's something that we're involved in that brings financial literacy to help a child that is going off to college. I struggled with that when I came out of high school, right? I love technology. I didn't have all these things, so I started a community college. The finances got hard. I dropped out, right? And it took years later, I ended up working for a corporation, and they end up paying for me to go back to school, giving back hours, and that kind of worked out for me. My son fortunately got a basketball scholarship, and he was able to come out of college with no debt. But what about the child that's not athletic or not pursuing in a direction? What is there that we are helping to put in place, that we're properly educating them, that they're now not having a fear of making this step forward? That's just one of my questions.
So, I was going to say, as far as, this one's not working. I was going to say, as far as helping the students identify paths for scholarships.
Right. So we're actually getting into financial aid season coming up for our juniors and seniors. Every high school will hold a financial aid night starting late October. Typically, FAFSA opens October 1st. This year, because of the Simplification Act, we're looking at mid-December. So we really start to get in and educate our kids, one, on scholarships, not necessarily because you play sports, but where can we get money from? What schools are we looking at? How do we navigate where we fit in, what we want to do? Do we want to go into the military and then have them help support us to pay for college? It really depends on the student, and this is what career exploration is about. That is part of it. How do we finance our outcome? Where do we want to be, and how do we move backwards? So we begin that in the 11th grade through a series of group discussions and individual discussions. It's a lot. I'm not going to lie, it is a lot. But I think our students are starting to get it. Student debt has been in the news a lot, and so we really tried to educate them on all of those types. Okay.
Christine, do you want to explain what position you had last year and what your current position is?
Oh, so last year I was here in this building. I was here for 7 years, and before that I was at Lackey High School. So I was the college and career advisor. Mainly here because they do have so many students, I focused on juniors and seniors. But the goal as we move forward with this career exploration program is to make sure we're starting younger. 9th and 10th grade. How can we get the word out to them? Actually, something that Ms. Brandt and I have been working on is even taking it into the middle schools and starting to develop scholarships for middle school students and starting to put them out there so they can start to see the process. How do they find the criteria that they meet? What do they need to do? Is it essay writing? Are we looking at our writing standards to match that? And so this year, as I moved over to Central, we're trying to put all of that together and make sure it's unity at every school, make sure we're doing everything at every school that needs to be done.
So since you're an 11th grade parent, what we are saying, just to summarize, that these nights or these sessions are coming up in December. If you don't see by, contact your principal and said, I went to this meeting with the Board of Education and the superintendent was there and I haven't heard anything. When will those nights happen at whatever your child attends? So, you know, that you have to experience it. So we can talk in generalities, but if the parents are not experiencing, we're also asking you to contact your school administrator and say, I heard that we do this, but I haven't seen it. When is it scheduled? And if it's not scheduled, then please circle back with us because we want to make sure that those opportunities are happening for other students. I will say the FAFSA is complicated, and what I will tell you for your 5-year-old, the high school is changing. And one of the things that's happening is when you talk about early college or dual enrollment, one of the things to think about is how does the high school opportunities for students means that they walk out of high school with ideally an associate's degree before they leave, or at least some college credits, because the financial component of higher education is very, very real. And just as a reminder to the room, we are close to about 43% of students, I think might be closer to 47% of students that begin college do not end college. And those are the kids that are accepted. So we have a problem in this country when we talk about higher education.
I just wanted to add, my daughter just went through this process. So she's technically a freshman, but because of CSM, she has 33 credits already before she even started her first class. And I was very excited for the opportunity because, of course, that saves a lot of money. You don't need to wait until high school. And I appreciate what you said. It starts at the minimum in middle school because you can get scholarships as young as 6th grade. Not all of them require essays. Not all of them require a lot of time. And so I think a lot of parents start thinking about it in high school. But for many at that point, candidly, it's too late. Now, with that said, if you're in 11th grade, if you're a senior, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't say, well, you know, I can't get anything, because that's not true either. There are scholarships every year that go unclaimed. There are thousands of dollars. There are full rides that go unclaimed. There are scholarships for everything. If you're left-handed, if you're right-handed, you know what I mean, if your favorite color is red. It requires, it requires a lot of research, and it can be overwhelming, but I can say that our daughter's career advisor was phenomenal. She was, if I could just do a plug for St. Charles, she was on top of it. She sent constant information. Her counselor was very helpful. And so if you're a parent, and I can say this from experience, that shows the slightest bit of interest, they're going to make sure that your child has what they need. They're going to make sure that they help you as much as possible. They're going to probably oversaturate you with information. But with that said, if college is not for your child, and it's not, and maybe not right away for everyone, that's okay too, because there are a lot of options for you. So I think that if I could get one thing to parents is start considering this in elementary school. And I was doing backflips when they talked about how they're going to bring some of these CTE programs at the elementary level. And I love that they're going to follow the students through their path. Because of course, you know, when you're 5, you may want to be a rock star. It's going to look very different when you're 15, or maybe not. But whatever that path looks for your child, that to me is what success is. When you graduate from a Charles County Public School and you are successful for whatever that means for you. That is the biggest thing I want to see all students have, and there's so many different options. So I'm happy to talk to you, having just gone through the process. I had a whole spreadsheet with all different, like the level of planning, right? But I'm happy to share with whoever wants it, because it does start very early on. And then you're not caught so off guard. And there are a lot of organizations that will help you. Some are paid, some are not. That one organization that my daughter was involved in, they met every week, Thursday something, 5:30 or whatever. And so it was on your mind every single week, Thursday at 5 o'clock, that this is my time that's going to be dedicated just to college or just to career. So happy to help, but also your counselor and your career advisor, they will go above and beyond. I can speak from experience.
And
Also, I just wanted to add to, what school does your child attend? North Point, okay. So I have two kids that graduated from Charles County Public Schools, and they went to North Point, and I remember the career counselors would send out a monthly sort of newsletter, and it listed out by month, you know, what the scholarships were and when the due dates were. And so we would just kind of skim through them and say, well, what do you qualify for? You know, what do you meet the criteria for? Okay, let's do it. And so be on the lookout for that. And to Ms. Morley's point, make sure you connect with that college and career advisor here and the counselor. Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, tell them that you want that information. And, you know, junior year, you know, you're late to the game, but you're not too late, you know. So definitely if you get the ball rolling now, attend those FAFSA sessions, because it is a bear, don't get me wrong. I've done that a million times. But definitely connect with the career counselor, because they're really resourceful, and you know, the money's out there. Like Ms. Morley said, it just, a lot of times you got to know where to go. So those newsletters I think are really helpful. So.
And I would like to point out, I'm on my fourth child. I have one that's going to be a senior this year. Well, this is a senior this year, and I've been through this with a kid who didn't have the greatest grades. That's the one thing I would like to point out. We talk about these scholarships, and that scares a lot of kids, because they're like, oh, I don't have a 3.5 GPA. I only have a 2.8. And I would like to say that there are scholarships and there are opportunities for kids no matter what your GPA is. If you're not an athlete, you know, if you kind of, you know, you enjoyed high school but not the academic parts. I think all of those students still find a place, because some of these colleges and universities have bridge programs. My son was in a bridge program. He, you know, he forgot he was in school sometimes, right? But he was in a bridge program. He was in the welding program. He did welding. He still went to college, and that was a bridge program. He went to one of the HBCUs in the area. He came during the summer. He did some work. They said, you can still come. And after he did the bridge program, they gave him a scholarship. So I encourage all parents to not shy away from exploring not only, you know, what they have you know, in our local community, but talk to the colleges too, because they want kids to come, and if there's a will, there's a way. So there's definitely some opportunities out there for students.
Thank you. The other question is on technology. Having a technology background, and we see how the world is, everything is technology. It's going to another level with AI and everything. And so my younger son, who's 10 years old, we started him out in pre-K, I think. Anyway, we ended up taking him out, and we homeschooled him, and for a while, for the longest, you know, every time I would ask him, you know, what do you want to do in life? He would all say, I'm going to stay home with you guys forever. I'm never moving out. I'm never getting married. That's out of the job. And all he thought about was Roblox, Roblox, Roblox. After this year, I had visited. I didn't know CMS had some programs for homeschooling kids. Actually went there, and somehow over the summer, someone called me and gave him a scholarship to go for some summer class for engineering and robotics. And he went and he literally enjoyed it. And as we were doing graduation, for the first time in his life, he said, when I grow up, I want to be an engineer. And he really said that he really enjoyed it. So the question is, how soon is too soon to begin to engage kids in classes? Even though he's in 4th grade, I feel like more technology classes, because now they're, you know, they have tablets, they have iPhone, he's on Roblox. This guy had figured out how to get in my computer, change my password, screen setting. I'm looking at him like, dude, you have a gift for technology. You're using it for the wrong reason, but now I want an outlet for you to now, you're very gifted, and to begin to stir up that gift at an early age. And if you can do all this and figure out all this stuff on my computer and, you know, changing stuff every time I go around, like, dude, what did you just do? You made me feel like I want to go back to school for technology. How soon is too soon to begin to implement these classes, even to kids at an earlier age than waiting for middle school, you know, elementary school? Question, do you guys see, you just talk about Microsoft and the tech guy here in cybersecurity. Yeah. I mean, how soon is too soon to start implementing these things when they're gifted, right?
Wait, ma'am, so I'll turn it over to the staff. Kyle? Hold on. We have, to your point, in elementary school, we have programs, and a couple that come to mind are something called Project Lead the Way. And if you're going to speak to that, so we do have those programs in elementary school, but please.
Absolutely. So I'm Simone Young. I work as a STEM coordinator. And Becky, tag in. Don't go too far from the mic if you like. But we do start really early. We start through learning through technology through play a lot of times. So even in pre-K, they are starting to use robotics, like programmable floor robots. And they have to think about the sequence that the robot needs to follow in 1 foot increments. And so it can be tied with literacy. For example, they may retell a story. And first, Bebot, that's the name of the robot, may visit the first part of the story, or just in the second part, or answer a question, or even add up numbers on a number line using a robot. So we try to embed that in. Students in elementary start with computer science and computational thinking, and we move through those skills as they progress. For some of the extracurricular STEM activities, we usually start with those clubs and teams in 3rd grade. Younger than that, they're not really ready to compete. They're ready to maybe build and show demonstration of their understanding. So we do have extracurricular if they want to go further, even starting at 2nd grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we do have Project Lead the Way launch in all kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade classes with the exact intent that you're talking about. So there's, they're all 10-hour modules, and so they've got engineering and computer science in each of those grades, and it's for that exploration. We want to expose our students to that content and curriculum early on before they're deciding what they're good at, what they like, what they don't like, what they're not good at. We want to really expand the vision so that we know moving forward, those are aspects that are within all industries. So we want to build that capacity young and exposure. So it is in all of our kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd. And that is strategic to tie into when a lot of the extracurriculars and things start in that 3rd grade year.
If I could add too, a lot of corporations, a lot of corporations also offer programs for free. My son did Amazon Ahead, which was fantastic. And he, as a result of that, for about 2.5 minutes, wanted to be an engineer. But it definitely encouraged his love of all things tech, and it started him really, I noticed, doing much better in math as a result. I just jotted down a few things that came to mind. I'm happy to talk to you offline. Nesby Jr., University of Maryland has an excellent program. CSM has a great program. Morgan State has a partnership. I wasn't kidding when I said I have a spreadsheet. I'm happy to give it to you. But a lot of this is my own work, happy to give it. I have no sense of ownership, but 2nd grade, I find, is usually the minimum, but a lot more programs for 3rd and 4th grade and up. And many of these things are free. And once you get in, this also starts your pathway to build those relationships to future scholarships as well.
And I also think there's some other opportunities to, I like to meet kids where they are. So you have esports and e-games. There are, kids can now get a scholarship to college playing esports, right? So EA Sports has a whole, relationship where kids are competing, just like you can play on a basketball court, but they're now playing Madden or whatever those games are, I don't know. But they're playing these games, they're going to championships, and they're winning $100,000 scholarships to college, and they're going to get a degree. Part of it is, I play a game, but part of it is learning to program these games, learning how to do the AI in the games. So there's lots of things that are, out there at the little level with Roblox. I didn't even know what that was 2 weeks ago. But part of that, because I don't have little kids, so part of that is teaching them that, but then moving that, escalating it to a pragmatic part, right? Doing something that I already do, but finding the learning and the lessons in it.
Thank you. I'm sorry. With that said, I guess I'll find out from his school, because this is his first year back into public school. So I've been asking, well, I haven't received that kind of information. I've just been hearing about the regular basic subject and really trying to engage more with the teacher. And one of the things, when it piggyback to what you said about volunteering, one of the main reason why I pulled him out of school was because I realized at that stage, for him, he needed more one-on-one attention, and we realized that he was flourishing more with the support. But what I'm realizing now, putting him back, that he mentioned one time his teacher was like, he raised his hands to ask a question. She's like, I can't get to you. I have all these students, and I get it now that I'm like, how do a parent a teacher, to a ratio of one teacher to 20-something kids, being able to give that attention to some kids who may need some one-on-one attention to make sure they're not falling behind on their grades. So this is why I, as a parent, want to be able to partner with teachers to come in to either volunteer, how can we help, because there may be other kids who may just need that. And I realized that motivation or applauding him when he did something great really propelled him to really advance in his grade. And sidebar, Roblox actually taught him how to read, because he literally used to come to me, what are they saying? I said, no, you want to learn, you're going to have to learn. And literally overnight, this boy is reading. He's like reading a book, could read a whole book like nothing, right? So you see where technology was an influence in his life. And so I said it to say, again, how can we as parents, because I feel like now with the school system, it feels so weird to me, because back in the days, I remember I can just go to my kid classroom. Now I can't even get in the building. I got to show ID. I got to set a conference call. And I feel like there's a disconnection with parents and teacher, even while sometimes we're seeing a lot of behavioral issue, because it's like almost like we're a prisoner on the outside. There's really no true connection there. We have to, everything is, I feel like I'm sending my kid in and I can never get access to them, and I'm behind. When before, with my son, we would go in the classroom, the minute they saw our face, they got it together, and they're like, oh, mom and dad is here, you better, get your act together. And so I feel a lot of pressure for teachers, because, you guys now are very challenged, and I feel like because we've put so much power in the student's hand, in a sense, it's almost like they have more privilege, they get to do, I just don't like that system for me personally as a parent. But for me, I'm trying to figure out, how do I work with what is already established, and how can I get in to be that extra support that my kid is not failing in any area of his life. So I want a connection with the teacher or with the school system where I can be more visible, more present, to be an advocate and to help out in any way possible. And with that said, as he's now transitioning back into school, concerns of safety, or, one of the things I found out about my son, that he was not using the bathroom. He would hold his, till he got home. And then he's telling me whenever they go to the bathroom, and he's new into the public school system, he's like, other kids are trying to look at your private part while you're using the bathroom. So now he holds himself the entire day. So is there something where teachers aren't just allowing the kids to go in the bathroom? Maybe there needs to be someone standing at the door with the door open, more supervision, more visibility. Maybe no one's talking about these things, but they're really happening in the school. And so I want to be an advocate that my kid feels safe going to the bathroom and not having to hold himself till he get home in fear of someone is trying to violate his privacy while in school. So I have a big concern about that. The other big concern for me is, you talked about earlier with the whole drug thing in school, the vaping, I believe someone talked about over there. What about stuff like, what are we doing as far as the gummies and those things that are getting, because they're not just getting to the student, they're getting back home, and a younger sibling may see those things thinking it's candy, eat it, and then here we have not a crisis in school now, but it started at school, but it ended up at home. What are we doing as an entire community to prevent some of these things? Because the problem is an innocent kid who have no idea, see something, thinking it's candy, digest it, and they end up in the hospital. So what are we doing? What's our due diligence to not just search for vape, but stuff that are being in gummy and can cause a kid to have some bad reaction or possibly could lose their life in the process?
So I'll look to the superintendent to talk about the things that we do in the schools.
And I know we're wrapping up, but I've asked Dr. Jones to follow up with you after the meeting to discuss specifically the issues of how you want to connect more with your son's specific school. And we will make the liaison so that the school is aware of your concerns and follows through with you. In general, we do get questions around the bathroom use, so you're not alone. And we need to make sure that the school is aware of these concerns, how we support you in that, but that's a very specific conversation for your child in that particular school. We've been talking, I have been doing talks for the past 3 years that I've been here. We usually ramp those up right before Halloween around the gummies and what they look like. Frankly, to be honest with you, we educate. That's how we deal with this issue. We educate and talk to kids about drugs. We have, with the sheriff's office, we have the several programs where students in the classrooms with SROs talk about drugs. We use the actual names. They start at the elementary level, and we tell them, and we're now teaching kids not to take candy from a friend during lunch hour, not to circulate food, don't share foods. That's one of the things. Sometimes parents have even contacted me, oh, my kid got in trouble for sharing foods. That's not just because of allergies. Now it's because we don't want to, there's a lot of lookalikes. But we are increasing the education to our students. The other aspect to this is increase the education at home and to families around how to talk to their students. So one of the things that I emphasized in this video that's on our website that's called the State of the Schools is some of the programs that we have, like Talk, They Listen, and those are tips from a national program for parents to bring up these conversation topics throughout the day and throughout the time that kids are home, and to be very explicit to them. There's a podcast going around where our health officer, Dr. Abney, gave some very sound advice. If you have elementary age kids and you're going to your friend's house, there could be drugs for medicinal or recreational purposes available to them. Some of them may be baked in, some of them look like food items, candy. And what you now have to teach your young children is anywhere you go, before you consume anything that is not from our home, you need to bring it to me and ask, can I eat this? And I hate to be that explicit, but if the health officer is saying that's the education that we now need to be mindful, we also need to learn those tips as parents. So our goal now is to educate our students and also to have and hold several sessions for families to talk about these very specific things. So we're going to do a couple more sessions between now and January with the health officer, the sheriff's office. So you please be on the lookout. You'll hear us talk about some of these issues in forums that people can watch later or can attend and ask questions. But very relevant to your questions. Thank you, and thank you for being in public schools. Mr. Lucas?
Yes. Yeah, thanks, I appreciate it. Is that your last question?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
my last question,
Okay.
and I just wanted to possibly offer just one suggestion, if it isn't already in place, that maybe pulling or looking for students who may have left a previous school, so maybe they've graduated, say elementary or in middle school or high school, that maybe can come back and, because normally when kids are in school, they don't really want to share too much, but maybe after they've transitioned out of their school, they can give you some ideas or some tips and tools what to look for, what may really have happened in those schools that they probably weren't comfortable in sharing because of retaliation or bullying or whatever their fear may be. But a lot of times, with my son in college, when I talk to them now, they're telling me stories that they never told me back then. So now I have a better awareness for my younger kids to hear, like, Mom, pay attention. This is the sign. This is what they'll do. This is what. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea. But they're more comfortable in probably sharing once they transition out of that school, out of maybe fear. But I think maybe if you guys can have a student advocacy, something where from a previous, they've graduated or they've gone on, but they've been in the school system, and they can shed some light how kids are getting stuff in the school, how they're doing things, so they're the ones who know what's really going on, and those are probably can be some of your best eyes for you. So just a suggestion.
I appreciate it, ma'am. Thank you very much. Folks, I'd like to, Kyle, we good?
Yes.
Thanks, Ms. Mackey. So just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Again, this will be posted, the video will be posted, and if you have any more questions or topics, please feel free to send them and email them to boardmail, that's BOARDMAIL @ccboe.com, and we'll be sure to get a response back. So again, I'd like to thank everybody, superintendent and staff, for being here, for everyone coming out tonight. Really appreciate it, and be safe going home. Thank you, everybody.